The final gambit. The skies above Earth had darkened 3 years ago, when the Kraden Armada first appeared in orbit. Their sleek, crystalline ships had hovered like predators, casting shadows across continents. Negotiations had lasted mere hours before the bombardment began. Commander Elena Reyes stood at the viewport of Bunker 7, the last major human resistance stronghold buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Outside, beyond the reinforced walls and kilometers of rock, the world was a wasteland of ruined cities and scorched earth. The Kraden had methodically dismantled human civilization, hunting down military installations and industrial centers with ruthless efficiency. "Status report," she demanded, not turning from the viewport that showed only darkness, a camera feed from the surface that revealed nothing but night and distant fires. "Not good, Commander," Lieutenant Paddle replied, sliding a tablet across the metal table. "We've lost contact with Sydney base. Bangkok went dark yesterday. We're down to 11 confirmed outposts globally, and fuel reserves are at 17%. Elena's jaw tightened. Another base gone. Another 1,000 souls either dead or captured. The Kraden didn't take prisoners. They took test subjects. And the Kraden. Their patrols have increased in sectors 4 through 7. Intel suggests they're preparing for another sweep of the mountain range. We have maybe 72 hours before they're on top of us." The command center fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. Bunker 7 housed over 5,000 people, the last concentrated group of military personnel, scientists, and civilian specialists in North America. If the Kraden found them, humanity would lose its last organized fighting force on the continent. "Get Dr. Chen up here," Elena finally said. "It's time." 20 minutes later, Dr. Marcus Chen stood before the command staff, his normally pristine lab coat stained with grease and his eyes sunken from too many sleepless nights. Behind him loomed a holographic projection of what looked like a ship, but unlike any Earth vessel that had ever flown. "This," he said without preamble, "is the Phoenix." The room erupted in murmurs. The projection showed an asymmetrical craft cobbled together from disparate parts, some sections clearly scavenged from commercial airliners, others from military jets, and some components entirely unrecognizable. "You want to explain what we're looking at, Doctor?" Elena asked. Chen gestured, and a hologram rotated. "We've been collecting and analyzing debris from Kraden skirmishes for 3 years. Every time they lose a ship or even a fragment of technology, we've retrieved it. Their superiority made them careless. They never bothered to collect their dead or salvage their damaged tech." He expanded a section of the hologram. "We've reverse-engineered some of their propulsion systems, weapons technology, and most importantly, their shield generators." Colonel Reynolds, head of military operations, scoffed. "We've tried adapting alien tech before. It's incompatible with our systems." "That's because we've been trying to make their technology work with ours," Chen replied, unfazed. "The Phoenix does the opposite. We've built our systems around theirs. It's not pretty, but it works." Elena studied the projection more carefully now. What had first appeared as haphazard design began to make sense. The ship was intentionally asymmetrical to accommodate the alien components. "You're seriously proposing we build this thing?" Reynolds asked. "It's already built," Chen said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. "Explain," Elena commanded. Chen swiped the display, and the hologram was replaced with actual footage of a massive hangar beneath the mountain, even deeper than Bunker 7's main levels. There, nestled in a cradle of scaffolding, was the Phoenix, an ugly patchwork leviathan that looked nothing like the sleek Kraden vessels or any human design. "We've been working on it for 18 months. Every engineer, physicist, and mechanic who survived the initial attacks has contributed. We've cannibalized everything. Civilian aircraft, military hardware, even parts from the old space station. The core is powered by 3 nuclear submarines reactors, modified to interface with Kraden energy converters. And you kept this from command." Reynolds stood, face flushed with anger. "On my orders," Elena interjected. Need-to-know basis. If the Kradon had captured any of you and extracted information. She let the implication hang. Chen continued. It's not pretty, and it's not perfect. But it flies. The Kradon shields we've adapted should hold against at least a few direct hits from their weapons, and we've integrated their own weapon systems with modifications. How many can it carry? Asked Admiral Turner, who had commanded Earth's last naval fleet before it was vaporized in the South China Sea. Crew complement of 30, Chen replied. That's all we need to operate the essential systems. And the offensive capabilities, Elena pressed. Chen's expression hardened. We've created something they won't expect. The Kradon use quantum phase beam weapons, elegant and devastating. We couldn't fully replicate them, but we discovered something interesting. Their shield technology has a fundamental vulnerability to kinetic impacts at specific velocities. He tapped his tablet, and the hologram showed a new image, a massive railgun assembly fitted into the Phoenix's core. We're going old school. This electromagnetic accelerator can launch projectiles at velocities that create a harmonic disruption in their shield frequencies. It's like hitting a crystal glass at exactly the right pitch to shatter it. Colonel Reynolds still looked skeptical. And you've tested this? You know it works. Small-scale tests are promising, Chen admitted. But we can't do a full-scale test without alerting the Kradon. This will be a one-shot mission. Elena surveyed the room, noting the mix of hope and doubt on the faces of her command staff. How long until the Phoenix is ready for launch? 24 hours for final checks, Chen replied. We were hoping for another week, but with the Kradon closing in. Elena nodded slowly. Then we have no choice. Launch in 24 hours. The next day passed in a blur of preparations. The chosen crew, pilots, engineers, weapons specialists, were briefed and stationed aboard the Phoenix. Supplies were loaded, systems checked and rechecked. Below in Bunker 7, the remaining personnel prepared evacuation protocols. If the Phoenix failed, they would scatter to the smaller outposts hidden around the globe. Elena stood in the massive underground hangar, staring up at the Phoenix. Up close, it looked even more bizarre, a hodgepodge of metal and composite materials, with sections of sleek Kradon technology grafted onto human-built structures. Exposed wiring ran along some sections of the hull, while others were covered in hastily welded plates. It's not pretty, Chen said, coming to stand beside her. It doesn't need to be pretty, Elena replied. It just needs to fly. And fight. I should be going with you, Chen argued, not for the first time. Elena shook her head. You're too valuable, Marcus. If this fails, the next Phoenix will need you. The hangar began to clear as final preparations were made. The massive roof would open for the first time, revealing a tunnel that led up to the surface, a launch tube for humanity's last hope. Elena walked with purpose toward the boarding ramp. Her flight suit felt too tight around her neck, but her steps were steady. As commander of Earth's last significant military force, the mission was hers to lead. The Phoenix's interior was a stark contrast to its exterior, meticulously organized, every system labeled, every control station positioned for maximum efficiency. The bridge crew stood as she entered, faces tense but determined. Status report, she called, settling into the command chair. All systems operational, reported the chief engineer, a woman named Torres who had once designed commercial satellites. Reactor output at 93%, the best we can expect with the integration limitations. Weapon systems online, added Lieutenant Keller at tactical. Main railgun charged to 70% and climbing. Auxiliary defenses ready. Kradon patrol detected, called the sensor officer. Approximately 50 kilometers northwest and moving this way. 3 light cruisers. Elena took a deep breath. Seal all hatches. Prepare for launch. The Phoenix shuddered as the massive hangar doors above began to part, revealing the launch tunnel. Emergency lights flashed along the walls as warning klaxons sounded. Everyone in Bunker 7 knew what was happening now. Final system check. Elena ordered. "Propulsion ready," reported the pilot, a former Air Force captain named Rodriguez. "Shields standing by," called another officer. Elena opened a channel to Bunker 7 command. "This is Phoenix Actual. We are go for launch." Dr. Chen's voice came back immediately. "Understood, Phoenix. Tunnel is clear. Good hunting, Commander." "Initiate launch sequence," Elena ordered. The Phoenix's engines roared to life. A strange, dissonant sound as human and alien technology merged into something new. The entire ship vibrated as power surged through systems never designed to work together. "Structural integrity holding," Torres reported, eyes fixed on her displays. "Hull stress within tolerance." "Take us up," Elena commanded. The Phoenix rose, slowly at first, then with increasing speed as the repurposed Kraden gravity drives engage. The launch tunnel rushed past their viewports, the journey to the surface taking mere seconds. And then they were out, under the open sky for the first time. Night had fallen over the Rocky Mountains, the stars visible through patches in the cloud cover. For a moment, it was almost peaceful. The moment didn't last. "Kraden vessels have altered course," reported the sensor officer. "They've detected us." "Battle stations," Elena ordered calmly. "Shields up. Prepare main weapon." The Phoenix rose higher, accelerating toward the approaching Kraden ships. On the main view screen, Elena could see them now. 3 sleek, crystalline vessels that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, beautiful and deadly. "They're scanning us," Keller reported. Elena could imagine the confusion among the alien crew. The Phoenix looked nothing like Earth's previous military vessels. It was an abomination by both human and Kraden design standards, a desperate creation born of necessity. "They're charging weapons," Keller warned. "Evasive maneuvers," Elena ordered. "Bring us around for a railgun solution on the lead vessel." The Phoenix banked sharply, its hybrid propulsion system responding with surprising agility. The Kraden ships fired, brilliant beams of energy lancing through the night sky. One struck the Phoenix's shields, causing the entire ship to shudder. "Shield holding at 82%. Torres called out. "They're targeting our weaker sections," Keller observed. "They can see our patchwork design." Elena nodded. "As expected. Continue evasive pattern. Charge the railgun to maximum." The Phoenix danced through the sky, absorbing hits while evading others. Each impact weakened their shields, but the ship held together. "Railgun at full charge," Keller announced. "We have a firing solution on the lead vessel." Elena leaned forward in her chair. "Fire." The Phoenix shuddered as the massive electromagnetic accelerator discharged. A projectile, little more than a specially designed chunk of metal, accelerated to incredible velocity in an instant. It crossed the distance to the lead Kraden ship in less than a second. On impact, the alien vessel's shields flared brightly, then collapsed. The projectile continued through, tearing into the crystalline hull. Secondary explosions rippled across the ship's surface before it began to fall, trailing fire and debris. A cheer went up from the Phoenix's bridge crew. "They're regrouping," the sensor officer warned. "And I'm detecting communications. They're calling for reinforcements." Elena nodded grimly. "As expected. Set course for orbital insertion. We need to reach their fleet before they have time to analyze what just happened." The Phoenix surged upward, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind. Ahead lay the Kraden fleet, dozens of ships, including their massive command vessel. It was a suicide mission by any rational assessment. But humanity had run out of options for survival. All that remained was to show the Kraden that underestimating human ingenuity had been their greatest mistake. The last stand. Space opened before the Phoenix like an endless black ocean. The patchwork warship shuddered as it cleared Earth's atmosphere, systems straining against forces they were never designed to withstand. On the bridge, warning lights flashed across multiple consoles. "Coolant leak in Section 4, Torres reported, fingers dancing across her engineering station. "We're routing through backup systems." "External hull temperature stabilizing," another engineer called. We made it. Elena didn't share their momentary relief. Through the main viewport, the Kraden fleet was visible. 27 ships of various sizes arranged in a defensive formation around their command vessel, a massive crystalline structure that dwarfed everything around it. "They're tracking us," the sensor officer reported. "Multiple weapons locks detected." "Initiate countermeasures," Elena ordered. "Deploy the chaff." The Phoenix released a cloud of specialized debris, each piece containing components salvaged from Kraden technology. The aliens' targeting systems would struggle to distinguish between the chaff and the Phoenix itself. "Incoming transmission," communications reported. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Elena nodded. "Let's hear it." The bridge speakers crackled, and a voice spoke in slightly accented English, the result of their translation systems processing human languages for 3 years. "Attention, human vessel. Your resistance is futile and illogical. Your species has been judged and found wanting. Your technological inferiority is evident in your crude construction. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." Elena exchanged glances with her bridge crew. The contempt in the alien commander's voice was palpable. "No response," she said. "Let them think what they want." "Tactical status of the main railgun. Recharged to 87%, Commander," Keller replied. "But we'll only get a few shots before the magnetic coils overheat." Elena studied the tactical display. The Phoenix was outgunned and outnumbered. Their only advantages were surprise and the enemy's arrogance. "New targeting protocol," she ordered. "Focus on their smaller vessels first. We need to create confusion in their formation." The Phoenix accelerated toward the fleet, its hybrid engines pushing to maximum output. The Kraden ships began to adjust their positions, clearly not viewing the approaching Earth vessel as a serious threat. "They're not even raising their shields to full power," Keller observed. "They think we're making the suicide run." "In a way we are," Elena replied grimly. "Fire when ready." The railgun discharged again, the recoil causing the entire ship to shudder. The projectile struck a Kraden frigate, punching through its minimal shields and tearing the vessel apart. Before the aliens could react, the Phoenix fired again, destroying a second ship. Chaos erupted among the Kraden fleet. Ships began maneuvering frantically, raising shields and charging weapons. The Phoenix dove and weaved through the formation, its ungainly appearance belying its surprising maneuverability. "They're firing," Torres called. Energy beams lanced through space from multiple directions. The Phoenix couldn't evade them all. Several struck the shields, causing systems throughout the ship to fluctuate. "Shields at 60% and falling," Torres reported. "We can't take much more of this." A violent impact rocked the ship, throwing crew members against their restraints. A secondary console exploded in a shower of sparks. "Port stabilizer failing," the pilot shouted, fighting with the controls. "We're losing maneuverability." Elena gripped her chair as the ship lurched again. "Reroute emergency power to shields and propulsion. We need to stay mobile." Another hit sent tremors through the deck plating. Smoke began to fill the bridge as fire suppression systems activated. "Commander," Torres called, her voice tight with urgency. "The reactor integration is becoming unstable. The alien components are rejecting our containment protocols." Elena's mind raced. This was always the risk, forcing incompatible technologies to work together under combat stress. "Can we stabilize?" she demanded. Torres shook her head. "Not while maintaining current output. We need to reduce power, or," she hesitated. "Or what, Lieutenant?" "Or we channel the instability. Direct it outward." Understanding dawned on Elena. It was reckless, desperate, and exactly what they needed. "Do it," she ordered. "Tactical, prepare for close approach to their command vessel. All power to forward shields and propulsion." The crew exchanged nervous glances, but moved to comply. The Phoenix changed course, now heading directly for the massive Kraden command ship. "They're targeting us with everything they have," Keller warned. Evasive pattern Delta, Elena commanded. Make them work for it. The Phoenix juked and spun through space, taking hits but avoiding catastrophic damage. The Kraden command ship grew larger in their viewport, its crystalline structure reflecting the light of distant stars. Reactor instability at critical levels, Torres reported, her voice steady despite the dire news. Containment failing in 2 minutes. That's all the time we need. Elena replied. All hands, prepare for emergency protocols. She opened a ship-wide channel. This is Commander Reyes. We are initiating the Firebird protocol. All personnel move to emergency positions and prepare for sudden acceleration. Throughout the ship, crew members secured equipment and braced themselves. They all knew what Firebird meant. It was their final option. Distance to target, Elena asked. 15 kilometers and closing, the pilot reported. Their point defenses are tracking us. Shields down to 30%, Torres added. Elena took a deep breath. Initiate Firebird on my mark. The Phoenix continued its approach, weaving through increasingly dense fire. The Kraden command ship loomed before them, its weapons ports glowing as they charged for another barrage. 5 kilometers, the pilot called. Mark, Elena shouted. Torres slammed her hand down on a specially designed control. Throughout the Phoenix, safety systems disengage. The incompatible reactor components, human and Kraden, were suddenly allowed to interact without regulation. The effect was immediate and violent. Energy surged through the ship, overloading systems and creating a cascading reaction. The Phoenix's shields flared brilliantly, expanding outward in an electromagnetic pulse, unlike anything ever witnessed in human combat. Reverse thrust full, Elena ordered. The Phoenix shuddered as its engines fired in the opposite direction, fighting against its momentum. But the real damage was already done. The pulse wave struck the Kraden command ship, interfering with its shields in ways the aliens had never anticipated. Their systems, designed with elegant precision, had no defense against the chaotic energies created by the human-alien hybrid technology. Through the viewport, Elena watched as sections of the command ship shields collapsed, creating vulnerabilities across its hull. Railgun status, she demanded. Operational, but barely, Keller replied. We have 1 shot remaining before complete system failure. Target their central power core, Elena ordered. Fire when ready. The Phoenix's railgun fired for the final time. The projectile crossed the diminishing space between the ships and struck the command vessel precisely where its shields had failed. The impact penetrated deep into the ship's structure, reaching its power systems. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, silently in the vacuum of space, the Kraden command ship began to break apart. Explosions rippled across its crystalline surface, fracturing the elegant design into thousands of pieces. Direct hit, Keller shouted. But there was no time to celebrate. The Phoenix was in serious trouble. Systems were failing across the board as the reactor instability continued to worsen. Containment failure imminent, Torres reported grimly. We have minutes at most. Elena nodded. Begin evacuation procedures. All hands to escape pods. Alarms sounded throughout the ship as crew members abandoned their posts and headed for the emergency evacuation systems, one of the few components that was entirely human in design. Kraden fleet is in disarray, the sensor officer reported as he prepared to leave his station. Their command structure appears to have been centralized in that ship. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Then we've accomplished our mission. The bridge emptied quickly, leaving only Elena and Torres at their stations. You should go, Lieutenant, Elena said. Torres shook her head. Someone needs to maintain what's left of the systems until everyone's clear. I've rerouted everything I can to keep us stable for a few more minutes. Elena nodded in understanding. Then we stay together. Status of evacuations. Torres checked her console. All pods launching. They should be clear of the blast radius. Around them, the Phoenix continued to come apart. Panels fell from the ceiling, and the lights flickered ominously. Through the viewport, they could see the Kraden fleet breaking formation, some ships already beginning to retreat. "They've never faced defeat before," Elena observed. "They don't know how to respond." "Humans are good at overcoming impossible odds," Torres replied. "It's what we do." A violent shudder ran through the ship. Warning lights cascaded across the remaining functional displays. "Final pod is away," Torres reported. "Impact on Earth in approximately 40 minutes. Elena nodded. "And us?" Torres met her gaze. "Reactor breach in 30 seconds. Elena turned to look out the viewport one last time. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue jewel against the blackness of space. Around them, the remnants of the Kraden command ship drifted aimlessly. "You know," Elena said quietly, "they laughed at us. Called our ship crude, inferior." Torres managed a smile. "Guess they learned not to underestimate human engineering." "That they did, Lieutenant. That they did." The Phoenix's reactors finally gave way, releasing their pent-up energy in a brilliant flash that temporarily outshone everything else in Earth orbit. The explosion consumed what remained of the patchwork warship and sent shockwaves through the scattered Kraden fleet, damaging several more vessels. 3 days later, Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the command center of Bunker 7, watching as the survivors from the Phoenix were debriefed. 28 of the 30 crew members had made it back to Earth in the escape pods. They'd brought with them not just their lives, but data, valuable intelligence on Kraden ship designs, weapons capabilities, and most importantly, weaknesses. The end.